Welcome to Lumra Theory, the show where we analyze other Lumra players. Today we are talking about value plays only latest upload, where Dan pilots Lumra. This is his starting hand. Turn 1 he plays on Urza's Cave into an Amulet of Vigor. Turn 2 he plays Hickory Woodlot. I personally would cast 6. First, we have 1 less depletion count on Hickory Woodlot. Second, we can on turn 3 attack with 6, fill up our graveyards, and then can do a massive Lumra TB. Now the Showreel pilot casts her commander and has a Bloodchief Ascension in play. So now Lumra will have a really hard time the moment Bloodchief Ascension has all its counters. One thing I would have loved to see for Dan untaps, he taps Hickory Woodlot so it has only 1 depletion count on it, so he can do a better Lumra, because then he can sacrifice Lotus Field and Urza's Cave, and Hickory Woodlot is already in the graveyard because it has no depletions counters on it. He plays Lotus Field and sacrifices Hickory Woodlot and Urza's Cave. I personally would have sacrificed Lotus Field and Hickory Woodlot. Then with the 6 man he casts Lumra. He gets back into play Hickory Woodlot, Urza's Cave, Forest and a Ghost Quarter. Now he casts a 6 and I think in this specific case it's fine. Turn 4 Bloodchief Ascension is already active. Then plays a Command Beacon for turn. Attacks with Lumra and 6, gets a 6 trigger and puts Field of the Dead into his hand while getting an insane amount of Bloodchief Ascension triggers into his face. He then taps Lotus Field, Command Beacon and Urza's Cave to recast a Shire of the Vaal, discarding Field of the Dead as additional casting cost. I would have tapped Hickory Woodlot and Lotus Field. Hickory Woodlot dies because it has no depletion counters on it, and then we could use Command Beacon, Forest and Lumra because it's a forest to sacrifice Urza's Cave and find ourselves a Vesuva, making it a copy of Lumra, and then we can do the Vesuva loop. We might die to Bloodchief Ascension here because we get of every single Vesuva another Lumra TP. We can try to find Boseiju, who endures, then with the next Urza's Cave activation find an Arid Archway, bounce the Boseiju into our hands, and then remove the Bloodchief Ascension. And after that we can just present a loop. At this point Dan has no way of winning the game anymore. He needs to crack Urza's Cave to find a Vesuva, let it enter as a copy of Lumra, it dies to state-based actions, then he needs to hope that he can find either Boseiju who endures or an Arid Archway. If either one of those cards is in the 4 cards, he can then find the other card with Urza's Cave crack ability, then bounce with Arid Archway's ability, Boseiju who endures back into his hand to remove the Bloodchief Ascension. Then he would be at around 8 life, and could then present the Vesuva loop to win the game in Sunscorched Desert. On turn 6, his life is already too low to even try that, and after that, Showreel was able to drain out Lumra and Elsha to win the game.